For nearly 8 decades, one man carried the most terrifying secrets of Adolf Hitler's final days. Heinz Linge wasn't just a valet. He was the silent witness to the rise, madness, and fall of a dictator who believed he was untouchable. Now, after 79 years, the truth he finally revealed shakes everything we thought we knew about Hitler's last moments, and what really happened inside that bunker. The man who served the devil. Heinz Linge was born on 23 March 1913 in Bremen, Germany, into a modest working-class family. Before entering the orbit of the Nazi elite, he worked as a bricklayer, a trade that reflected his practical nature and unpretentious beginnings. Like many young men of his generation, he was drawn into the expanding influence of the National Socialist movement that promised opportunity and belonging in a rapidly changing nation. In 1933, the year Adolf Hitler rose to power, Linge joined the Waffen-SS, the military branch of the Schutzstaffel that would come to symbolize both loyalty and terror in Nazi Germany. A year later, in 1934, Linge was transferred to the Berg at Obersalzberg, Hitler's mountain residence near Berchtesgaden. The site had become both a retreat and a center of power, where political decisions and personal relationships intertwined. As part of Hitler's bodyguard unit stationed there, Linge entered a world of formality and vigilance, where proximity to the Führer could both elevate and consume a man's life. His first encounter with Hitler at Obersalzberg left a deep impression on him. Linge later recalled how Hitler, in a show of apparent warmth, personally greeted each guard, shaking hands, asking their names and ages. To the young SS man, this small gesture conveyed a leader who seemed genuinely interested in his subordinates, a calculated humanity that captivated those in his service. In early 1935, Linge's reliability and composure earned him a new appointment. From a list of many candidates, he was selected to join Hitler's personal household staff, a position that would define his life for the next decade. What began as a ceremonial role soon evolved into something far more demanding. Linge became not only a valet, but also a household manager, traveling companion, and personal attendant, serving as what one source described as butler and maid-of-all-work combined. His duties included preparing Hitler's clothes, maintaining the order of his private quarters, and accompanying him on journeys throughout Germany and occupied Europe. Few individuals shared such sustained intimacy with the Führer's daily routine. This close proximity exposed Linge to the contrasting sides of Hitler's personality. He witnessed the carefully cultivated image of discipline and charm presented to guests and subordinates, but he also saw the darker temperament that lay beneath, the abrupt coldness, the detachment when discussing military operations, or the fate of millions. Linge's role demanded discretion, and yet his memoirs reveal an acute awareness of the moral and emotional contradictions surrounding the man he served. But the closer Linge got, the more he saw how dangerously human Hitler could appear, until a shocking early encounter would change his perception forever. Meeting the monster, the transition from bodyguard to intimate attendant, marked the start of a professional relationship that would place him closer to Hitler than almost anyone else in the regime. At the Berghof, Hitler's residence on the Obersalzberg, Linge was introduced to the rhythms and expectations of his new role. The atmosphere, though governed by discipline, was outwardly relaxed compared to the rigid formalities of Berlin. Hitler cultivated an image of approachability, greeting guards by name, inquiring about their families, and presenting himself as a paternal figure to his staff. Linge, like many of those around him, was struck by this calculated warmth, which seemed to fuse genuine charisma with an underlying demand for absolute loyalty. Beneath this veneer of geniality, however, Linge gradually perceived the ideological and psychological undercurrents that defined Hitler's self-image. Hitler often spoke of being chosen by Providence for a unique mission to reshape Germany and Europe. Linge later recalled his master's conviction that destiny had spared him for greatness, an idea Hitler illustrated with anecdotes such as surviving a near-fatal car accident that he claimed had been prevented by fate. This sense of divine preservation deepened after several assassination attempts, notably the failed Munich beer hall bombing in 1939. Though Linge rarely discussed these incidents in detail, the recurring theme of miraculous survival reinforced Hitler's belief that his life was guided by higher forces, a belief that influenced his decisions and hardened his self-righteous resolve. In September 1939, as war erupted across Europe, Linge's standing within Hitler's household rose further. He replaced Karl Wilhelm Krauss as chief valet, after Krauss was abruptly dismissed for a seemingly minor failure, neglecting to provide a specific bottle of mineral water during a frontline inspection. The episode demonstrated Hitler's mercurial temperament and the perilous nature of service in his inner circle. Precision, obedience, and anticipation of the Führer's desires were paramount, and any lapse, however trivial, could end a career overnight. As chief valet, Linge became the custodian of Hitler's daily routines, a role demanding meticulous attention to detail. According to his later accounts, Hitler's day began around 11 a.m. After long nights of conferences and dictation, mornings were quiet, devoted to reading newspapers and correspondence, followed by a light breakfast of tea and biscuits. His dressing was timed with military precision, often by stopwatch, to maintain order in an otherwise chaotic environment. Lunch, strictly vegetarian, was served around 2:30 p.m., a reflection of Hitler's dietary preferences and health obsessions. Yet one captured bomber, whom Hitler refused to execute, would reveal a side of the dictator that Linge never expected to see. The man who tried to kill Hitler, the man who attempted to assassinate Adolf Hitler in November 1939, was Johann Georg Elser, a German carpenter who sought to prevent further war by eliminating the dictator. On the evening of 8th of November, Elser planted a bomb in the Burgerbräukeller in Munich, timed to detonate during Hitler's annual speech commemorating the failed 1923 beer hall putsch. By a twist of fate, Hitler left the event earlier than expected, and the explosion killed several people but missed its intended target. Heinz Linge, who was by then serving as Hitler's valet, later recounted the incident in his memoirs, noting how the Führer reacted with an unsettling mixture of indignation and fatalistic calm. To Linge, the event seemed to reinforce Hitler's conviction that Providence continued to shield him for a divine purpose. What struck Linge most was not only the narrow escape, but Hitler's subsequent attitude toward the would-be assassin. Contrary to what might have been expected, Hitler did not immediately order Elser's execution. Instead, he instructed that the bomber be kept alive and put to forced labor, where his knowledge of explosives could be used under supervision. In Linge's account, Hitler expressed a grudging admiration for Elser's determination, describing his resolve as pure in its single-mindedness. This strange respect for a man who had nearly succeeded in killing him revealed the contradictions at the heart of Hitler's personality. He despised weakness, yet occasionally showed a perverse appreciation for courage and conviction, even when directed against himself. Through this episode, Linge glimpsed the peculiar moral logic that governed Hitler's world. Loyalty for Hitler was not merely a question of political alignment or obedience. It was a matter of strength and willpower. The capacity to act decisively, even in defiance, seemed to fascinate him. Linge's portrayal of this mindset suggests that Hitler viewed human relationships primarily through the lens of dominance and resolve. Those who exhibited unshakable purpose, whether friend or foe, commanded a distorted form of respect. It was a view that reduced morality to a contest of will, leaving little room for empathy or justice. By the time of the Munich bombing, Linge's position within Hitler's inner circle had solidified. As chief valet appointed in September 1939, he now oversaw not only the Führer's wardrobe and personal quarters, but also his traveling arrangements and the coordination of household and mess staff. His duties accompanied him wherever Hitler went, from the quiet seclusion of the Berghof to the tense atmosphere of wartime headquarters. The new role placed him at the intersection of domestic order and political command, where even mundane routines carried an undercurrent of power. But as Linge rose to full control of Hitler's personal service, he would enter a world of luxury, obsession, and hidden contradictions. Inside the Führer's private world, as valet and head of personal service, Heinz Linge carried immense responsibility within Adolf Hitler's inner circle. His duties extended far beyond attending to the Führer's immediate needs. He managed the entire household staff, which included servants, orderlies, cooks, caterers, and wardrobe attendants, ensuring that every detail of Hitler's domestic environment operated with military precision. From overseeing travel arrangements to inspecting uniforms and table settings, Linge was both administrator and attendant, charged with maintaining the exacting standards that surrounded the Nazi leader's daily life. Linge's memoirs offer a meticulous account of Hitler's personal routines, revealing a man obsessed with order and timing. Each morning began with a light breakfast consisting of tea, biscuits, and occasionally an apple, served after he awoke around 11 a.m. His dressing ritual was so regimented that it was timed by stopwatch to ensure consistency. Lunch, invariably vegetarian, was served at 2:30 p.m., reflecting Hitler's dietary beliefs about purity and health. The precision of these habits suggested discipline and control, yet they also exposed a dependence on ritual that bordered on compulsion. One of the most humanizing yet revealing details in Linge's recollections concerns Hitler's deep affection for his German shepherd, Blondie. Linge described how the dog occupied a central place in Hitler's emotional life, providing the companionship he rarely extended to people. He once remarked that it was easier for Hitler to sign a death warrant for a frontline officer than to accept bad news about Blondie's health. The statement encapsulates the distorted empathy that defined Hitler's character: tenderness reserved for an animal, indifference toward human suffering. Behind the public facade of command and certainty, life at Hitler's mountain residence, the Berghof, unfolded with unsettling normality. Linge's accounts depict a private setting that contrasted sharply with the grandeur of Nazi propaganda. Hitler and Eva Braun occupied adjacent bedrooms and bathrooms, a spatial arrangement that symbolized both intimacy and distance. Public displays of affection were non-existent, and their relationship remained carefully hidden from official view. Within this domestic theater, the rhythms of routine and secrecy blended, giving the illusion of stability while concealing the strain beneath. Linge also observed the small eccentricities that punctuated Hitler's private world. Despite his status, Hitler occasionally performed trivial tasks himself, such as changing light bulbs or measuring how quickly he could dress, as though seeking control over the minutiae of his surroundings. In the final months of the war, his physical and mental state deteriorated sharply. Linge recounts that Hitler resorted to using cocaine-based eye drops to ease severe pain, a detail that underscores the decay of both body and regime. But while Hitler kept Eva secret, his inner circle of generals and ministers hid rivalries far darker and far deadlier than love affairs: power, rivalry, and betrayal. In his memoirs, Heinz Linge offers vivid miniature portraits of the powerful men who surrounded Adolf Hitler, revealing the tensions and rivalries that define the Nazi leadership. Figures such as Hermann Göring, Joseph Goebbels, Heinrich Himmler, and Martin Bormann appear not as distant names from history, but as living personalities competing for the Führer's approval. Through Linge's observant eye, the corridors of power within Hitler's household emerge as a theater of vanity, intrigue, and fear. Hermann Göring, once celebrated as a war hero and head of the Luftwaffe, embodied flamboyance and excess. Linge recalls his elaborate uniforms encrusted with decorations and his penchant for theatrical display. His vanity amused Hitler on occasion, but it also provoked mockery. In one incident, Hitler, irritated by Göring's self-congratulation, fashioned a medal out of cardboard and presented it to him in jest, a moment that revealed both the Führer's contempt and his manipulative sense of humor. Göring's ostentation contrasted sharply with Joseph Goebbels' more calculated personality. Linge portrays Goebbels as the consummate propagandist, gifted with persuasive charm and an instinct for emotional manipulation. His loyalty to Hitler was unquestioned, yet it often masked deep insecurities and a constant need for validation. Heinrich Himmler, in Linge's sketches, appears as the most chilling of the inner circle, quiet, meticulous, and utterly devoted to ideological purity. Linge sensed in Himmler a fanaticism that bordered on obsession, coupled with ambitions that extended beyond his official authority as head of the SS. By contrast, Martin Bormann, Hitler's private secretary, wielded power through proximity and administrative control. Linge frequently saw him filtering information, controlling access to Hitler, and subtly isolating other advisors. Through quiet efficiency, Bormann became indispensable, even as his influence bred resentment among fellow officials. Linge's position placed him at the crossroads of these rivalries. As valet and head of Hitler's personal service, he was both servant and observer, moving freely between private quarters and official gatherings. He witnessed how Hitler exploited the competing ambitions of his subordinates, often setting them against one another to test loyalty and maintain dominance. Praise could turn to censure overnight, and a single misstep could end a career. Linge noted the psychological toll this environment took on those who served under constant scrutiny, where every gesture might be interpreted as a sign of allegiance or betrayal. This chapter traces the inner decay of a regime devoured by its own ambitions. Through Linge's perspective, the reader sees how the struggle for influence within Hitler's household mirrored the larger dysfunction of Nazi leadership. The manipulation of personal rivalries not only fractured unity, but also contributed to strategic blunders and moral collapse. What began as competition for favor evolved into a system of mutual suspicion, where loyalty was both weapon and trap, a microcosm of the regime's broader descent into chaos. But when one of those men planned the unthinkable in July 1944, Linge's faith would be shattered in the blink of an explosion. The bomb at the Wolf's Lair. On 20 July 1944, a group of German officers led by Colonel Klaus von Stauffenberg carried out one of the most daring plots to assassinate Adolf Hitler. The plan, conceived within the German resistance, sought to eliminate the Führer and seize control of the government to negotiate peace before Germany's total collapse. Stauffenberg placed a bomb inside a briefcase beneath a table in the conference room at the Wolf's Lair, Hitler's heavily guarded military headquarters in East Prussia. Heinz Linge, by then an experienced member of Hitler's personal staff, was present nearby when the explosion ripped through the room. His later account provides one of the most detailed eyewitness perspectives on the immediate aftermath of the failed coup. According to Linge, the blast tore through the wooden structure with a deafening roar, scattering debris and flames across the bunker complex. Chaos erupted as smoke filled the air and wounded officers staggered from the wreckage. Linge rushed to the conference hut, where he found Hitler standing amid the ruins, his clothes burned and his right arm injured, but astonishingly alive. Splinters had shredded his trousers and his eardrums were damaged, yet his demeanor remained unnervingly composed. Linge recalled that Hitler was already inspecting the wrecked room, brushing off soot, while demanding updates from his staff. To those around him, his calmness seemed almost superhuman. To Linge, it reflected the same fatalistic conviction that had shaped Hitler's belief in destiny since the early years. Within hours, Hitler turned the failed assassination into a propaganda victory. He announced to the nation that Providence had once again spared him, reaffirming his supposed divine mission. Yet behind the public image of triumph, Linge noted a profound shift in Hitler's mood. The explosion deepened his paranoia and sense of isolation. Suspicion now permeated every corner of his circle. Even longtime aides and officers found themselves under silent scrutiny. Hitler's trust in his generals evaporated, replaced by reliance on his personal guards and household attendants. Linge observed that the Führer withdrew further from the world outside his immediate quarters, holding fewer open conferences and relying increasingly on written reports rather than face-to-face discussions. The aftermath of the 20 July plot marked a decisive turning point in both the war effort and Hitler's personal leadership style. The regime responded with brutal efficiency. Thousands were arrested, tortured, and executed in a wave of retribution that silenced any remaining dissent within the military. For Linge, who witnessed the tightening of control from within the bunker, the episode symbolized the final hardening of Hitler's rule. The Führer who emerged from the ruins of the Wolf's Lair was no longer merely a commander, but a man besieged by his own mistrust, sustained only by an unyielding belief in fate and vengeance. Through Linge's eyes, the July plot stands as both a moment of missed salvation for Germany and the beginning of the Führer's psychological descent toward the bunker in Berlin. As the walls closed in, Linge followed his leader into the final nightmare, the Berlin bunker, where madness would become history. The last days in the bunker. In January 1945, as the Soviet army advanced relentlessly toward Berlin, Adolf Hitler and his remaining staff descended into the Führer bunker beneath the Reich Chancellery. What had once been a symbol of imperial power was now a fortress of despair. Heinz Linge, who had served the Führer faithfully for a decade, followed him into this underground world of concrete corridors and fading authority. The bunker became both a command post and tomb, a claustrophobic refuge where the final drama of the Third Reich unfolded. Linge's recollections paint a stark picture of the closing months. The atmosphere was thick with exhaustion and delusion. Hitler, physically weakened and increasingly detached from reality, clung to reports of phantom armies and non-existent reinforcements. The daily briefings grew shorter, his temper more erratic. Food supplies dwindled, and the sound of distant artillery echoed through the walls. Yet amid the disintegration of the Reich, Hitler's routines persisted. He continued to eat simple vegetarian meals, maintain his schedule, and issue orders as if the war could still be won through willpower alone. On 30th April 1945, as Soviet shells struck the city above, Hitler gathered his secretaries for lunch. Linge remembered the scene vividly, the strange calm that settled over the group, the muted conversation, and the sense that everyone understood what would follow. When the meal ended, Hitler moved through the bunker, shaking hands and embracing members of his staff. It was a series of quiet farewells. Then he and Eva Braun, who had married him the previous day, withdrew to his private study. Moments later, a single shot echoed through the concrete chambers. Linge entered the room and found the bodies. Hitler sat lifeless on the sofa, a pistol at his side, and Eva Braun lay beside him, apparently having taken poison. Acting swiftly under prior orders, Linge and SS adjutant Erich Kempke carried the bodies up to the garden of the Chancellery, wrapped them in blankets, doused them with petrol, and set them alight as artillery shells burst around them. The flames flickered briefly before being swallowed by smoke and debris, the symbolic end of the regime Hitler had built. The next day, 1st May 1945, Linge escaped the bunker amid the chaos engulfing Berlin. His freedom was short-lived. Within days, he was captured by advancing Soviet forces and taken to Moscow, where he was imprisoned in the notorious Lubyanka prison. There, he endured harsh interrogation and torture, his knowledge of Hitler's final hours making him a valuable yet expendable captive. For 10 years, he remained in Soviet hands, a silent witness to the aftermath of the world he had served. What do you think about Heinz Linge's chilling story and the secrets he took to his grave? Share your thoughts in the comments.